He said, hey, if you think back to mid-January a year ago, the first time this group was together, and if I would have told you on January 1st, 25, you're playing Texas as one of the final 8 teams in college football in the college football playoff, having won the Big 12, everybody in the room signing up for that. And his message was like, hey, you've entered the elite group of legendary Sun Devils because of what just happened this season.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option, the off-season edition. Yogi Roth, as always, joined by Jim Thornby. Today's guest, presented by our founding partner, 76, is none other than a repeat guest. That's right, it's the athletic director of Arizona State, Graham Rossini. Really excited to have him back on. We talked to him in training camp, and now we get to the end of the season, and nobody had a better rise than Arizona State. I don't care what fan you are of what team. Nobody started at the bottom. Preseason prediction of their conference and ended up in the college football playoffs. A big congrats to Graham Rossini, Arizona State. We'll get to that conversation in a little bit. But Jim, I'd like to just start with you. Off season, have you worked out? Like, what have you hit that off season?
Here we go. A little bit. I mean, definitely better than in season. That's for sure. Like, I mean, that's a low bar to climb over. But yeah, it's still like there's only so many football games left that, so I definitely on Sunday made sure to watch both of those games. And it was cool seeing all the names from the Pac-12 years, like seeing Frankie Louvu just killing it for the Commanders, man. I mean, that dude was undrafted free agent, and he's had such like the last, I think I want to say I think this is his 7th year in the league, and the last 2 or 3 years, like he's just been And then the funniest thing was when they were on the goal line there, and he did the two plays in a row when he just dove head first, like trying to stop the tush push, and then they caught the camera on him, and he kind of had his tongue out like as though he's like Jordan out there. But that was cool. And then I was looking at the Chiefs, and I was like, you look at their secondary, like almost every single player in the Chiefs secondary is a guy that we covered over the last 12 years, whether it was Justin Reed or Jalen Watson or Christian Roland Wallace. I think there was
Trent McDuffie.
McDuffie. I think there were 7 dudes in the Chiefs secondary that played, or maybe Christian Wallace might have counted for 2 since the SC and both at Arizona. But it was like, just like that's my favorite part, especially like when we get to this part of the season and like we're able to spend a little bit, at least for myself, I'll say, spend a little bit more attention to a game, to singular games. And then you see those names and you're like, oh man, look at him. It's, it's really cool.
That is cool. All right, 2 quick stories on that because I know we got stuff we want to get to. One on the workouts. I can remember when I was a young coach at SC and the season would end and really like signing day would end. Next week is National Signing Day. We'll see how that shakes out for teams around the country in this new world order. But afterwards, it'd be like every coach would be on like double days. So you'd work out in the morning at like 7 and then you get in one at noon. And like you literally were trying to make up for lost time and trying to get in shape again and trying to feel good again. And it was awesome, man. So I'm channeling that, Jim. I just went to F45 in Culver City, which I'm doing some fun content with. So shout out to them. I think the other story that I thought about watching the games, to your point, is all these young men that we were able to learn about a version of their story first. My heart broke when watched Dalton Kincaid in the end of that Buffalo game. This is a guy who didn't play high school football, I believe, until his senior year. He learned how to play catch. His dad told me, Ted Robinson, and Michael Molinari this at a bar in Boulder, at the Boulder Marriott, right outside of the Buff. And he said when he was a kid, they bought a trampoline. And he would jump on it for hours and hours. And first he was just catching it normally. And then it was like one flip, a back flip, a side flip, catch it between his legs. Like he just is so gifted with his hands. And when I saw that last play, my heart, it just sunk for him because I know how gifted and talented he is as a playmaker when the ball's in the air. And then Trent McDuffie. I mean, there's a big reason why he wears the number 22. It's because his late brother wore that number. And I can remember being at a Pac-12 media day, and I don't know if our viewers or listeners know this, but I do media training for a lot of players and teams. And he came up to my room and he goes, "Hey, I want to do some media training with you. I'm feeling like I want to share a certain story today." And you ended up telling that story for the very first time on our air. You can check it out on YouTube. It's a clip that, garnered a lot of attention, and it should. And that year in the draft, I believe it was Pete Thamel did a huge feature on Trent McDuffie based on the first portion of that story coming out because we get to know him. Those are the things that we're trying to do here at Y Option as well, like college football through the lens of the West Coast, unearthing some of those stories first here, and then hopefully other platforms take them, run with them, celebrate them, shine a bigger and brighter light on them. And that's where my head was at. And then lastly, I thought of Jimmy Lake, because when I think of the secondary at UW, I'm always going to think about Jimmy Lake. And I know he didn't have a great run there as the head coach, but God, he was great to me. Now he's the defense coordinator for the Falcons. I think he's going to resurface. I think he has all the tools to become a head coach. I think he learned a lot, obviously, in his time at UW. And I'll be looking forward to watching him and watching Trent again. And I'm a fan of the three-peat. Like, I'm on team three-peat. Where do you net out? I know it's not Super Bowl week yet. What do you think?
It's tough because I being in a fantasy football league this year and having Saquon Barkley on my team, like, I will be forever grateful to Saquon and to the New York Giants front office for letting Saquon go to Philly and really blossom on a whole nother level. So, some of those times you don't really know until the game actually starts when you just find yourself like pulling in a certain direction. But as of right now, I'm going to say I am team Saquon above all else.
All right. Well, that's a good bridge because all Penn State fans are team Saquon and now team Jim Knowles as he's the new defensive coordinator. Okay. My take on this, Jim, I did not see this coming. And when you're embedded with the team like myself and some of our Big Ten colleagues were over the course of the playoff run, you're thinking like when you reach the pinnacle, the only reason you depart for a lateral job is because of a choice that you make. It rarely happens, right? Sometimes maybe it's because there's friction. Maybe the offer's insane, which this offer clearly was. You could argue like, are coaches getting paid too much? I fall in that camp. I think it's ridiculous what coaches make now, but it is a reality. I never saw it coming, man. I never saw him leaving Ohio State for anywhere, let alone like a rival within the league.
Yeah.
They play each other. I looked at it November 1st at Ohio State. Circle that one. Storyline number 1. Storyline 2 is Drew Aller. And on and on and on we go. We had a lot of time to bang that one around. But I'll be honest, man, I didn't see it coming. Maybe to the NFL, like Al Golden left Notre Dame, maybe a head coach, back in an area where he grew up. I mean, he grew up in Pennsylvania. But I didn't see it. But it's a coup. I think it's a huge get for Penn State. And I'm curious to see where Ohio State goes from here.
Well, it's funny, too, because, that job came open because Tom Allen left to go from Penn State to Clemson. And it's just like, it seems like we're, we had kind of started to recognize being in the player acquisition era of college football. And now it seems like maybe is it part and parcel because of that? Whereas now I need this money to go get this player or whatever, maybe is that why we're seeing more and more coaches kind of moving, on the assistant level, even just moving around because, now this program is saying, we need to dedicate X amount of dollars for this and Y amount of dollars for that. And everything kind of moves around. And you see, we've seen a whole bunch of different reasons for, coaching moves this year. A couple of them you could almost look at not only the success that the coach had, but the possibility of, if I bring in this assistant coach, he's going to bring that player with me. If you look at like Ben Arbaugh or Jason Beck, with them, bringing their quarterbacks with them, to their new schools. So like there's all that portion of it. So it's all interesting in how all the different ways of staff building goes on these days. And it's funny because I know, we talked about this right before we came on, like your phone probably rings. I mean, your phone rings a lot, but I think probably from Jan 1 or, maybe December 15th to February 1st, your phone probably rings even that much more from, coaches either looking for an opportunity or looking for that, that gem of a new coach that you might have an inkling of.
Yeah, and then I threw in the Paris Musketeers head coaching search, which again hired Jack Del
go.
Rio. They just talked about him. Our boy Rhett Lewis was talking about the Musketeers on the Senior Bowl show right now on NFL Network. So big props to him. My wife almost had to, not almost, she did. She's like, "Hey, it's the off season. Like, what are you doing?" And she was right. Like I woke up and I was like, and just advice to all husbands out there. I was just like, "You're right. Like, thank you." And she was like, "That's what I get." Like, I think she wanted a little battle back and forth. Like, but she nailed it, Jim. I have been on the phone incessantly from the end of the season until now. You can imagine with the news of Pete Carroll going to the Rays, which we're going to get to here in a minute, it's blown up tenfold just because of my relationship with Pete. All things that I have learned are just par for the course in the industry. Just finished my 17th year calling games. You've been in the industry over 20 years. The longer you hang, the more relationships you have.
Right.
So I think there's a couple big picture thoughts because I love you put together this great list, right? Jim Knowles, Tom Allen, Ryan Walters goes to UW, right, to replace Belichick, who's now at North Carolina with his dad. USC hires Rob Ryan. How about that? Who is in the same tree as Danton Lynn, which I think NFL guys, when they come to college, like there's an energy there. Yeah. Then I think there's also like, what? We only get so many hours a week? What is that about? So I think Danton, having gone through that now for 2 seasons, one at UCLA, one at USC, I think it's a good thing for him. Reportedly Penn State was coming after him. They should have, right? Danton is a star, a rising rock star in college football. SC locks him up. Big props there. Cal, Brian Harsin, and Rolo. Yep, Nick Rolovich. They both go there as a duo on offense. You referenced Ben Arbuckle. John Mateer follows. Tito Sinceri, dear friend, hail the pit. Can't wait till they're done recruiting so I can hang out with him and his lovely wife. They just moved to LA. I think she moved here within the last day or so. And then you referenced Jason Beck bringing his quarterback. Here's a couple things that I don't think we ever talked about that I want to talk about in Power 2 football. Okay, let's just talk about the Big Ten and the SEC. This is my opinion. I think when you're looking at a Jim Knowles, reportedly, what was it, $3.1 million? Right?
Reportedly, yeah.
Reportedly, okay. Most coordinators are in the $1+ million, if not $2+ million. Like, we're talking about NFL salaries here, folks. What does it mean when I say, all right, let's talk about the 2 biggest leagues, the power conferences in college football? I think that we are in an era where it is so hard to get a premium job as an assistant coach. I just think it's so much harder. When I was coaching at USC, granted, this is almost 20 years ago now, I can remember when you became a full-time coach, you made $100,000. And it was like the biggest, it was bottles, it was table service, it was limos, it was like, we are celebrating. Now, you become a coordinator, whether it's a GM at USC, right? USC just hires a general manager, reportedly north of $1 million. Like, it is such big money. Why is it so hard to get the job then, you're asking me? It's so hard because if I'm going to pay you $500,000, $750,000, 1.2, $3.1 million, you have to, in my opinion, have tremendous experience behind you. I think you have to be able to answer so many things because now you're held to a different standard. All right, the era of coordinators making $600,000 is so long gone in the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't know every school's number, but I know they're all north of $1 million. If you want to just be competitive. Okay, well, if you're the head coach and you're going to hire somebody and you're going to pay them $1, $2, $3 million now, they better be legit and not like up and coming rising star legit. I think there's a different lens that you have to look at these coordinators through. I really think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be really hard to become a quarterback's coach, to become the run game coordinator, no line coach. Like, I just think it's going to feel more and more like the NFL, where those jobs are so hard to come by. Now, the good news for college is that you can pay anybody anything, right? So you can pay an analyst. You can have 50. Every staff has at least 50 people on their staff. Right. So you can pay your assistant quarterback coach $180,000 and have a great time. And he could live with his family decent. Who are we to say? Like a pretty good life, because that's a hell of a salary. Right. Yeah. So I just think that that's not what's getting talked about a lot. I think right now it is so hard. And I've talked to a lot of coaches. You're right. My phone's blowing up and it's, can you call this guy? Can you call that guy? Of course, I love calling on behalf of assistants. I think that is part of my duty as someone who is a guardian of the game. And then on the other end, what do I hear? Like, it's so hard to get this job. So I look at the places like the coastal Carolinas, right? Look at some of these places, like look at what Ben Arbuckle did at Western Kentucky, then the bridge to Washington State. Like, that is a version of the rise, especially as an offensive coordinator. Defensively, I think you're looking for savvy vets. I really do. So it's gonna be fascinating to track this thing. I think especially in the Big Ten and the SEC, because so much money is getting spent on these coordinators. And then your premium schools in the Big 12 and the ACC, they're paying the same amount. I don't think top to bottom, though. I'm going to put it on a limb here. I would imagine the difference between a lower tiered record-wise school in the ACC or Big 12 compared to a Penn State salary pool, I bet it's worlds apart. Because every school in the country cannot do revenue share, plan for revenue share, I should say, navigate NIL, have 50 plus people on their staff, have a true recruiting staff with a GM and a front office and a whole side of the building, a whole different wing, and pay your coordinators upwards of $2+ million. Like, it doesn't exist. What you sent a tweet the other night? Like, was it Ohio State? It operated a loss.
Yeah.
Right?
Reportedly. Yeah, that was
reportedly.
That's what. Yeah, I got to always throw in the reportedly, because I just so we.
And most professional teams operate. Sorry to cut you off. Most professional franchises operate at a loss, which is why if you're trying to buy a franchise, come support the Paris Musketeers. Don't buy the Lakers. There we go.
Ready, set, dream cabin nestled in the woods. Just 4 hours to go. New job halfway across the country. Butterflies before a first date. Wherever you go, 76 fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
Well, speaking of pro franchises, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, want to say surprise is the word, but probably pleased to see Pete Carroll back in a head coaching job. I know when we saw him last summer at the Elite 11, I mean, you know him obviously way more than I do. He seemed, meeting him for the first time, relatively content with where he was in life and getting to spend that time with his family. But as we talked throughout the season, and you talked to him a lot, you could kind of tell that itch just never really went away.
Well, I'll say this. Let's take people inside the Elite 11. You all saw, hopefully, I think our best podcast to date, at least in the conversation, right? Deep dive conversation, intimate. I asked Pete questions I never asked him before. I've known him since I was 19. I'm 43. To that point, we then went after that interview into a quarterback meeting with just the coaches. What do you recall, Jim? Because you were sitting in the back observing that meeting.
Oh, he was still you could tell he was still digging that, the coaching, especially to that young level of really impressionable minds. That's what kind of stood out to me. You could tell that he had that energy there.
Yeah, he has, and I love how people characterize him. Right, the Raiders put out a tweet that was like the wrapper of gum in the stadium, in the background, the gum in the foreground. Right, one of those perfect portrait mode shots. You see the big shoes, you see the fun, you see the smile, you see the silver hair. It's great. But when you get into the arena with him, he's the most competitive human I've ever met. Point blank. In that quarterback meeting we saw with all the Elite 11 coaches, he was challenging every coach. And what they challenged him on is how well can you compete to get to know your players? Oh, yeah. And I think that is the essence of him as a coach. So to the Raiders, what you're going to get is somebody's going to walk in, create an environment. You're going to create a culture where people get to know the best version of themselves. Be that in a variety of different personalities, a variety of different disciplines, a variety of different positions, of course, within the structure and the framework of an organization. Something very few teams have, very few franchises have, very few businesses have. And I think that they are getting an elite craftsman when it comes to culture. He came to USC as the fifth choice. He went to Seattle with something to prove. I could go do it in the NFL. He's now taking the Raiders as someone who has been there. He's present. He's connected to the moment. And I think they're going to get the best version of him. My last story about it is I could recall throughout the season. He and I would talk almost every week. And I remember he and I talked about coaching. He said a version of it in our podcast, which was, if I get another shot, look out. Because my time being off is going to allow me and has allowed me to be an even better coach. I mean, he is so on the razor's edge right now that I think it's going to be so unique to watch this thing build. And then finally, if I said to you, if anybody listening or watching this on YouTube said, hey, your last game, your last podcast, your last whatever is going to be 3 years from now or 3 weeks from now. Like if you knew that your opportunities were limited, I think we'd all attack it with a different level of joy and a different level of competitive temperament. And I think that's what they're going to get. Because it isn't, he's 73, right? There's a limited run here. How long is it going to go? And I think you're going to see him just pour into this in probably the most present way he ever has. And he's a pretty present cat. So I cannot wait to watch this thing play out. His staff will unfold. I love all the notes I've gotten from other coaches. Jim, talked to so many people that are so capable of going to coach with the Raiders. Pete's going to have everybody saying, I want to be a part of that. And I think he's in rare air right now in coaching where people are looking at an opportunity saying, I want to touch that. I want to learn that. This is the last time he's going to do it. You can read our book, Win Forever. It's on Amazon. It's going off the hook right now. You could listen to his podcasts and interviews, but I just think that there's something. It's like I just read Phil Jackson's book, Sacred Hoops, over the weekend because I'm teaching it in a class at UCLA. And I was like, God, that guy'd be fun to coach with. That's where Pete Carroll sits right now with the Raiders. So congratulations to Tom Brady and company. I think that Pete is probably more Tom Brady than he is the history of the Raiders. But wow, can they merge those two things? They might have a shot if they can get a quarterback.
And I think that's the most interesting thing too, because they probably, outside of a team that has a top 3 draft pick, which would then have an opportunity should they want to get a Cam Ward or Shador or whoever winds up being, by the time we get to end of April for that number, those top quarterbacks in the draft, they probably have, the least certain quarterback situation there. So there's definitely that opportunity. I'm sure he's looking at it as the opportunity to put in someone at that spot to really help that team grow.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew still is there, right, on the roster?
I believe so, but I don't know what his contract status is. If he will be a free agent at the end of this year or so. But obviously he was hurt at the end of the year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Vegas.
Yes, it is. Oh my God, I can't wait. And I love that it's in Vegas versus in Buffalo because it's an easy flight for us. So we'll make our way there. Don't worry about that. Easily in training camp and potentially more. With that said, a guy we talked to in advance of training camp is our guest today, Graham Rossini, the first-year AD at Arizona State. He's Arizona State through and through, has loved this university since he was a child. Now he is living out the opportunity to lead this university. And it feels as though he's been there for decades. He's guided this team, specifically this football team, and oversaw this football team to unprecedented heights. How often has Arizona State been this quote-unquote sleeping giant? This year they became that. So for the second time, so thrilled to welcome our good friend and fan of the Y Option podcast. We think he really likes it. He always says that he does. Good friend, presented on behalf of our partner, founding partner 76, Graham Rossini. And as mentioned, second time on the show, Graham Rossini, athletic director at Arizona State. Graham, we talked to you at Media Days in Las Vegas. It feels like it was a long time ago. And you had a line that we loved. You said, say yes and figure out the details, was some advice that you gave yourself. Here we are through the first half of your first year, a little bit over that here at Arizona State. Curious how that one lands on you.
Yeah, I think we would say yes to the college football playoff and figure out the details. It's that does seem like a decade ago at this point. It's hard to believe it's only 7 or 8 months at this point, but I think we're still processing what just happened. I know it's unlocked new and exciting things for our university, tremendous momentum for our football program. We've got an incredible leader in Coach Dillingham, and we're saying yes to everything that comes our way, and we'll it's the hurry up offense, right? Like, let's just say yes, we'll figure it out. We're in design build. We're in this transformative time as an industry, but we're in the right conversations, and it feels really good to be in that position.
One of my favorite things to ask people like yourself is like, what is it like to be you? Especially in year one. Like, you don't have year ones very often throughout your professional career. You've had a couple of them at different stops. But what is it like to be you now in the state of Arizona State that you just described?
Yeah, I don't know yet. It'll be fun to talk to you about that this summer at our media day and have the benefit of perspective. I mean, it's every day right now is a million miles an hour, and I'm loving it. I mean, that's the fun part is we are in every conversation. We are trying to open every door we can, and we keep saying these outcomes create opportunities. And so we're lucky that we're having a lot of people work really hard. A lot of outcomes are doing just that. They're opening up the next opportunity, and so it's just how do we get through today, make it the best version of today that we can, and then get up tomorrow and be prepared to go do what comes next. So, in a lot of ways, it's an out of body of experience still. I remember there was a moment on the sidelines in Atlanta at the Peach Bowl, and tried to really stop and take it in. It was hard to do it because the electricity of the game, and we're hosting a bunch of people, and you're trying to think about the next steps immediately afterwards, and win or lose, what we need to be mindful of. But I'm having a blast. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having a blast.
I would challenge that. I think you definitely know what you're doing. It's been such a joy to watch, right? I can remember my first year when I moved out to the West Coast and I was coaching at USC. And we went down to the stadium right behind you, and we're down at half, and SC is on the way to compete for a third straight national title. And ended up coming back and winning the game. But the idea of like Arizona State being a sleeping giant has never left me, because I heard it in advance of that week, talking to guys on our staff, like, God, this place is so cool. Driving through campus, oh my God, they have everything. And then to watch it awaken in the most unique of ways, to your point. I mean, you were picked to finish last in the Big 12. Clearly, nobody knew what they were talking about in that regard. But it feels like, to your point, like the Giants awakened. You've extended Kenny, you extended your coordinators. Like, is that a fair statement? And if so, what do you sense in that regard?
Yeah, it was funny right after the Big 12 game back in December. People asked about the reaction, and my immediate thought was going to the CFP has been a dream for so long, and we're showing that it can be a reality. It's no longer a dream. We're proving that this is an outcome that's possible at ASU, and I'm not suggesting that the only reason that's happening would be what I'm about to say next, but I think a big part of it is we want to surround ourselves with people that see ASU as a destination and not a stepping stone, not a jumping off point, not the next move in a career trajectory. But when people come here and see that possibility, they say, I want to make that better. I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of value adding to an environment that allows these dream scenarios to present themselves and to get unlocked in the way that we're starting to do that. And so I love my school. I love being a Sun Devil. It's been a big part of my background and something that I'm so proud to represent. And we have a lot of that in our department. We have 9 head coaches who are alums, a number of our assistants and support staff and administrators. And it's just part of the evolution of our university that people from an athletic lens see it as, I want to be a part of what they can do there. I want to be somebody in the foxhole that's unlocking this potential that everybody's thought was always here. What's time? It's our time. It's the moment that we want to be mindful of using, and it's all about finding the right people to keep unlocking that along the way. So, yeah, I mean, we're bullish. This isn't happening by accident. There's a lot of people, again, working really, really hard to figure out what's the missing piece, what's the skill set, what's the contrarian perspective, what's the idea that we want to pursue that connects our community, and it gets people motivated to come here, stay here, and add value back to this incredible university.
Evolution, come here, stay here. I mean, these are things that I think in years past, it'd be, if you go ball out at Arizona State, you get that quote unquote bigger job. You locked up Brian Ward and Marcus Arroyo, two men that I just have dramatic respect for and tremendously fond of. And you kind of said that you were going to pour the resources into this program. And that's exactly what you said last time we talked in July. And then you did it. What have you felt the reverberations be like when you locked up these 2 rock star coordinators who could coach anywhere at any level, in my opinion, and then you go extend the head coach whose dream was to be on that sideline right behind you?
Yeah, I mean, it played out in a lot of ways that we were hoping it would. And meaning it started with building the community, building confidence, building trust in what we're trying to do. And, we turned over the department late in the spring. And so there's only so much you can do between June 1 and the start of football season. And so the mindset departmentally was, let's do what we can to change game day for the better. And that immediately was about entertainment and affordability. And that allowed us to get to Camp T and just have a different energy around the football team. And Kenny was doing his part. He built a great roster. He built people that wanted to be here for the right reasons. And then as we brought the fans into that conversation, there was just an electricity around Sun Devil football that had been missing. And it really started to show you that this fan base has been eager to plug back in. They've been dying to reconnect, and they just wanted something to believe in. And we're starting to see that, hey, the trajectory is changing. The mindset's different. We value fan feedback. We value ideas. We value perspectives in a way that allows us to drive change. And that change benefits game day. And August 31st, we show up against Wyoming. It's hot. There's no avoiding 115 end of August. We're playing college football. It might be sweater weather somewhere else. It wasn't here in Tempe. But the crowd was awesome. And on night one, everybody said, hey, this energy is different. And fast forward, we beat Mississippi State the next week. First win against an SEC opponent ever, I believe. You start to look like, all right, there's some things happening, and go on the road, have a big Friday night win against Texas State in front of the country. And, in the state of Texas, we're recruiting immediately after that. Get back home for home games in the Big 12. And the crowd was into it. And it helped Kenny go to a freshman quarterback and say, hey, there's a minute left on the clock, kid, go win this game. And historically, our crowd has started to thin out at that point. People are moved on to whatever they're going to do next. And a minute left in the game, and Sam Levitt's looking down at the student section, and there's 10,000 strong still. And the lower bowl of Mountain America Stadium is on their feet and just captivated by this football team. The fans brought the energy. The team responded to energy. That energy brought more people in the conversation. More people brought resources. Resources allowed us to, step one was retain the coordinators. And that's a credit to Coach Dillingham early on, saying, hey, people will be coming for them. They're very good at what they do. Let's try to secure them as Sun Devils. And important to note, like, they're going to be head coaches, and they're going to be wildly successful head coaches. We're just trying to buy those extra couple years in Tempe as coordinators before they get the chance that makes sense for them and their career and their families. We want that. We want assistants to become coordinators to become head coaches. That's definitely part of our model. But we also selfishly want to keep as many good people on campus for that extra year or two as we can. And so that was step one. And the fan base plugging in and having great crowds and having new partners and donors enter the conversation allowed us to get the resources to retain two really key people on this football staff, and then shift attention to, hey, we're going to get towards the end of the season, and the portal is going to open, and retaining the roster and competing for new talent was going to be important. And so driving NIL throughout the season and driving our recruiting message was important. And then the final touch, as you mentioned, was getting Kenny locked up, and his extension that we announced right before the Peach Bowl was significant for a lot of reasons, because it showed the fan base, I hope, that, hey, we do want to make the investment in leadership. We do want to commit to the people that are having success and not let them get tempted by other opportunities elsewhere. But more importantly for Coach, longevity matters to him. Being a Sun Devil really matters to him, and designing this where there's a model for him to be here for up to a decade was really important. And so I think it's a great deal. It was something that he's excited by. We're obviously thrilled at the prospects of him being a legendary figure in Sun Devil football. And it just gives us now stability moving into this next chapter. We've entered a different conversation. People are paying attention to ASU in ways that they haven't in a long time. And we're committed to not letting it be a one-time feature. We want to kind of build on this platform and again, these outcomes that create opportunities along the way. So I'm rambling a bit, but it played out like we were hoping it would. And that's not to discount all the hard work that so many people put in to get us to this point. But I think when you sense there's something special going on because there's special people associated with your programs, it's our responsibility to do everything we can to set them up for success, now and moving forward.
Yeah, you can sense it. You can sense that the giant is awoken to a large degree. What was really fun is that you're right. The fandom grew not only in your backdrop and not only in your community, but around the country. And I just kept wondering, like, What's it like to be down on the field post game with Kenny Dillingham? Like, my favorite moment of the season, I think, was he was like, "I was one of those guys." Like, that was and I know you probably find your way down there at the end. Give us a little, if you can, a little reporter action from what it's like to be down at field level.
Yeah, I mean, he brings the energy. There's no doubt about it, and he's consistent. And I think that's the beauty of Kenny is like what you see on an ESPN post-game interview is what you get on a Monday morning 6 a.m. meeting when we're just chopping up the week and getting organized. And that moment, I think back. There's a meme of I think Homer Simpson like getting absorbed up into a bush, and it was the same thing of Kenny getting like engulfed in a sea of ASU students and. I don't remember the impressions, but that clip really had some legs to it, and it was the first of many this particular season. But it's been a blast to watch him go to work every day. I love being his teammate. I love what he represents, and what you see is what you get. And I think that's all we can ask for is just consistency in the people that you're around as a professional. In your friend circles, in your family, you just want to know what to expect when you walk into a situation and. Nobody's going to outwork this guy. Nobody's going to be more connected to his team and his coaches and his community and his fan base. And I'm just fired up to be able to do this with him.
Amen. I can't wait in like 2 years to look back and do those studies on admissions, enrollment, like all the things that happen when there's excitement. There's always been excitement to go to Arizona State. Like, who didn't want to go be a Sun Devil? But now with the success that you just referenced, I think it'll only continue to grow. A big part of that is a guy that was on very few people's radars. I know it was here with us. I'm going to ask about Cam Scattaboo.
Yeah.
There's a lot of layers to that, right? There's his belief in himself, how he was coached. And then there's like, hey, we got something special here. And there's the pushing for awards. There's all these layers that you know better than I in that athletic department. But it felt like this one was organic. Like, it felt like anybody who tuned in was like, Cam Scattaboo, it's my guy. Like, you just heard so many analysts who never paid attention to Cam Scattaboo out of Sac State. There are very few of us. And then the country jumped on him. What did you notice that was unique about his experience through your eyes at Arizona State?
I mean, it's the ultimate American success story of just somebody who was just fighting for his chance, and his inner belief never wavered. His confidence never wavered. I remember last season just watching him navigate day to day, and he has a presence. He walks in a room and you feel it, and you just see like, hey, that guy's he's locked in on something. He's here for different reasons, and he's trying to get better today. And just he carried himself with a swagger that I don't think many people do, and is a self-made superstar. And I can't wait to see what he does next because I've had the luxury of watching him for 2 seasons get better every single day, week to week, season to season. And a part of me is a little disappointed that we didn't go a week or two further just to see that fever pitch continue to grow. 17 million people that watched the Peach Bowl. The takeaway was, wow, Scat's pretty good. And I'd pay to watch that guy play again. And luckily, people are going to have a chance to do that on Sundays here next fall. But I think it's a credit to he wanted to be surrounded with people that he believed would make him better. And he was willing to put in the work. And that's all we ask any of our athletes to do. Say, we're going to give you every tool to be successful here in whatever sport you're in and whatever your aspirations are. I do believe that the answer to whatever people want to pursue lives at ASU, and we're going to make that available. And we're going to remind, and we're going to showcase, and we're going to continue to, talk about those things. We just need our athletes to meet us in the middle and just tune in to the support, tune into the tools that are afforded to them here. Because we have a lot of people that are, this is our career. Like the purpose of what we do is to develop young people through sport. And that goes for everybody, certainly in the department, but throughout the university as well. And I think he really sensed, I'm going to get better here. I believe in the people. I understand that the tools and the resources are in place, and he used them and he tapped into it, and he challenged his teammates to do the same. And he brought this program alongside the work that he wanted to do as an individual in the sport, but also understanding that I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And I've got an opportunity to really galvanize a locker room and a program and a fan base and a community in a way that very few things can. And he's a legendary Sun Devil because of it. And, the 2 years that he spent on this campus have given us a lifetime of stories that'll turn into urban legends, and he'll be a rock star every time he's back around Sun Devil football or even here in the Valley. And we've mentioned this a lot lately, but the Arizona Cardinals sure would look good to take Cam Scadaboo in the draft here this spring, and would love nothing more to be able to have him close to home and see his progression up close and personal.
Amen. Amen to that. Look forward to the draft and all the things around that. A couple more before we cut you loose here. I know how much you value relationships. And anyone who's ever played a sport at any level, when the season ends, the relationship has to go through a transition. And when you hit the moment you all did in the college football playoff, like I'd imagine there's a different emotion, a different layer of success, a different goal, and probably a different disappointment. Can you take us inside post-game when you lost just a heartbreaker to Texas and what you felt around the essence of where this team went this season?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of hurt in that moment because as it happened, the moment that you process while the season ended, we woke up today, we thought we were playing for 2-3 more weeks. And then in that instant, like your heart got ripped out of your chest real time, and you're having to face that reality. Like it's over. Like this team will not be the same team it was this morning ever again. And so it's kind of that trying to savor the lasting moments of that togetherness. And I was in the locker room kind of surveying it and, feeling it. I know these guys were feeling it more because they're gladiators competing in that setting. And I thought Coach's message was so perfect and so apropos in the setting where he's like, hey, it hurts. And I hurt with you. And he got choked up and a lot of guys were getting choked up. And he quickly brought it back into perspective, which grew from the moment. And he said, hey, if you think back to mid-January a year ago, the first time this group was together, and if I would have told you on January 1st, 25, you're playing Texas as one of the final 8 teams in college football in the college football playoff, having won the Big 12, everybody in the room signing up for that. And his message was like, hey, you've entered the elite group of legendary Sun Devils because of what just happened this season. And this team will forever be remembered alongside the 1970 Peach Bowl and the 75 Fiesta Bowl and the 86, 96 Rose Bowl teams. And this is an upper echelon Sun Devil football team forevermore. And I'm proud that he grasped the significance of the moment and was able to turn the hurt into perspective in that quick conversation. And it hurt for a while. It still does. There's no doubt. But I think there's a sense of perspective and gratitude amongst the football program, amongst the fan base, amongst everybody who's been around it, that you can immediately appreciate that we saw something special as a season, as a team, as a game. I mean, that we were on the wrong end of history, but that was still an instant classic. And everywhere we go, that was targeting, or you guys were the better team, or the fan base showed up, whatever the case may be. Tip our cap to Texas, they won the game, and we did not. But I think if you could lose well, we lost well that day, and we just opened the eyes of what's possible here at ASU through that game and the season. And these group of young men are to be credited for that.
Yeah, amen. And it was targeting, at least from our lens. To that point, when you look at the playoff, let's go big picture here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Because it seems to be like there's this another year, then maybe it expands again. Should it change? Because every team who had a bye ended up losing, but I don't think that's an easy blanketed statement. Your loss was different than somebody else's loss, and somebody's win was different than another team's win. I'm curious where you net out in such a year of change around the college football playoff and where it is in year one.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly tweaks and adjustments that can be discussed, and I know have been discussed and will be discussed. But I mean, by and large, like what an awesome outcome for college football, and what an incredible sport we're lucky to be a part of. And I think the good outweighs the tweaks that need to be made by 10x if not more. And because we lived firsthand what it did for a fan base, and much like you've seen in a lot of other sport leagues across the world, an expanded postseason, playoff, whatever you want to call it, it just gives more people a chance to believe and have that hope or that pathway to go compete for a championship. And I think when you look at the progression of college football, where champions were dictated by polls, and then it was a matchup in the BCS, and then it was the first iteration of the CFP, and now it's this expanded format. I mean, think about Boise State, think about Indiana, think about SMU, think about Arizona State, and these fan bases that maybe didn't wake up on July 1 thinking that this could be real, but got the benefit of experiencing it. And selfishly, we're excited about that, and we're proud that we were part of this inaugural format. But moving forward, it's going to give a lot of fan bases, a lot of programs, a lot of young men the chance to know that I've got a pathway to compete for a championship. And that's all a true competitor wants, is to know that hard work will be rewarded. There's multiple pathways to get in that conversation. And when you're in, you got to make the most of it. And we fell a few steps short of the ultimate goal, but by and large, what a win for college football. And I can't wait to see how we use this momentum to unlock the next set of opportunities for the sport, and use questionable calls to help solidify. Like we need a national standard in officiating. We need clarity on what targeting is. We need better facilities for replay review, and all the tweaks that you can make with the benefit of perspective. But we did need that one time through to really understand what it meant, and we'll only get better from here. But I'm a huge fan of the format. I'm so appreciative that people long before I was in the chair were lobbying for this, and having the conversations to say, let's make decisions on behalf of college football and what's great for the sport and what gives more players and more coaches and more fan bases and more communities a chance to experience what we just did. Because we created core and generational memories with the 24 Sun Devil football team, and to think that more people will have a chance to do what we just did, that's awesome. And that's what sports is all about, giving people hope and belief and a pathway to go unlock what they didn't know they were capable of doing.
Yeah, so well said, Graham. I think in finality here, watch Arizona State, you referenced Boise State, Oregon Ducks. We talk about college football through the lens of the West. It felt like whether it was 2 years ago in Washington's run or this year and the teams that just referenced run, it felt like the West Coast has made this emergence. Do you feel that in the chairs that you're in now as a member of the Big 12?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're proud to represent the West Coast. I mean, that's always going to be a huge part of our identity. And, with respect to the realignment that's happened, I think the Big 12 is absolutely the right fit for us. And it gave us a chance to get in Texas and create relevancy. It gives us an opportunity to have a connection to Florida because UCF's in our conference. But, flying a proud flag for the West Coast and having California recruits look at us and say, hey, the travel is manageable. You're playing in better climates. You're playing on great campuses. I think there's some unique advantages to playing at ASU, and we've got to maintain California relationships. We've got to tap into those recruiting beds. We have a lot of fans of our own throughout the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, up and down this side of the country, and I think the benefit of visibility and breaking down the East Coast bias and breaking down kind of the way that everybody wants us to go Big Ten and SEC, and there's a lot of reasons why those conferences are having that success. But visibility creates awareness, and that awareness is showing you that there's really good football on the West Coast, and we're just proud to fly the flag on behalf of our side of the country and our former Pac-12 brethren. And it's important. It's important that we build this national brand, and you can't build a national brand without maintaining stability and relevancy in the parts of the country that we're well known in, while we're building awareness and fan base and interest from recruits, going from west to east.
Well, really well said. I mean, we could talk to you for an hour. Thank you for the time, for the second time. And it's just been a joy. It's been a joy to watch this thing go and to hear you in July and then to watch it play out with the incredible staff that you get to oversee. Was just an absolute blast. Not nearly as much fun as you probably had in Tempe, but we were living vicariously through your social media and through that of your program. Thank you for the time, Graham. And let's lock it in again. We'll get you for a third time in the near future.
Sign me up. Yeah, Yogi. Proud of you, and always good to be with you, and just love what you're doing for the sport. And thanks for wanting to hear about the Sun Devils.
Amen, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
It's the Afterglow. That was Graham Rossini, athletics director at Arizona State. As always, all of our guests this season are presented by our founding partner, 76, keeping you in the know on the go, go, go. He's been going. He's been going since he took the job. Thankful and grateful he took the time to pause and give us really a lot of time. Give us 30 minutes, deep dive conversation on the season that was for ASU. Jim, your takeaways, something you learned, maybe something you wish we asked.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I take notes as as the thing's going on. I'm writing down like, oh, this is a good one here, this is a good one here, and like I'm just like each one, like when I'm thinking about like what we're going to talk about here, I'm like, well, okay, now it's this one. Okay, no, it's this one. But to that point, like his thoughts on the college football playoff this year, and just how it though as a whole, you can to your point, you can nitpick this or that, or like, oh, the format or the seedings or whatever. But as a whole, I think it was really good for college football because it did give schools hope. You could find yourself, I mean, you can find yourself being picked last in your league in the preseason and still find your way to the top. Because even in a 14 playoff, like you would 100% have to go undefeated because you're not getting any momentum into the season. It's not until probably, if you're picked out though, it's not until midway through the season until anyone even starts to think about you in the top 25 if you're undefeated. Like, so like it does give that much more layer of hope to schools that are not Alabama or Ohio State or Notre Dame or what have you, like that. And I just think that overall that is good for the game with all the other changes that are happening right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't have to, in my opinion at least, it doesn't feel like those that maybe aren't the biggest of blue bloods have to fight like they used to have to fight and politic and the narrative, etc. Arizona State's a great example, right? Picked 16th in their division or in their league, last in the league in the preseason. They win the whole dang thing. Like there wasn't an argument over should they belong. And then they come within, whether it's a call or a snap or whatever, from taking down Texas, which is easily one of the top few teams in America. I think my biggest takeaway was just recognizing the tone of the way that he spoke. You could hear the competitive temperament, right? And I just think that, like, having been around athletic directors for the majority of our professional lives and around head coaches, you want somebody that's going to compete with you. I always go back to, we talked about Pete Carroll in advance of bringing Graham on. And Pete taught me the following, which is the word compete. And if you looked it up on your smartphone, it would say to strive against. If you scrolled a little further, you'd read the Latin root of it. And it means to strive together. And the best competitive cultures are the ones that are striving together. And it's not athletic department or this side of the building versus that side of the building. It's like, no. Like, what do we need to do to make sure this place isn't a stepping stone? And I think that some places it's okay to embrace if that's what you're going to be, that's what you're going to be. That is part of the reality of college sport. But for football, at the sleeping giant no more. I mean, how are they not going to be a preseason CFP predicted team? I mean, who's going to be your favorite to win the Big 12 next year? Got a elite quarterback, Sam Levitt coming back.
Yeah, right. They're going to be right there. I saw a thing just the other day. I think it went on 3. It was like top returning players for college football next season, and I actually saw it's 2 different lists. One of them had Sam number 2, and one of them had Sam number 1 as the top returning player in all of college football, which is like mind blowing to think. To what Graham was talking about. What Kenny said to that team after the loss, and just like, if anybody would have said we would have been here now, you'd sign up for that, 100 times out of 100. And to think of where Sam Levitt went from being that transfer from Michigan State, you weren't even sure when he got last spring if he was even going to be the starter. Jaden Rashad was still there. So it's really a testament to that program. Of how far they come. And it's funny because I still think back to, I don't know if it was week 2 or week 3, and obviously my alma mater, my beloved Wildcats were picked much higher up in that Big 12 standings. And by the end of the season, you could pretty much turn that thing on its head. And that's how they put it up. But I remember being in like week 2 or week 3 being like, I think we might have to have a conversation about who the better team in Arizona is right now. And sure enough, we definitely needed to have that conversation because it was not the one that we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think this in closing, Graham Rossini down to Kenny Dillingham to Marcus Arroyo to Brian Ward to the aforementioned Sam Levitt. I believe what they're doing in Arizona State is unique in college football. I think they're creating a brand that has loyalty attached to it as one of its first DNA traits. I think in college football, we'd be ignorant to say that loyalty isn't eroding. I think with Kenny Dillingham's history, Graham Rossini's history, with the way they're cultivating the culture that they've built there heading into year 3, I think they're creating a community of loyalists to Arizona State. They love being there. They see the opportunity to grow. It's a great place to live. It's a really fun school to go to. The eyeballs and the attention are all on Tempe right now. It just hit me like that. That's what they're doing. That's what they've done. And that, I believe, is a unique trait in the era we sit in college football. And props to Arizona State for having the willingness to go out and hire a young 31-year-old, I believe at the time, Kenny Dillingham, when he was hired, the youngest coach at the time in major college football, and then extend and keep the staff going. So overall, just massive props and really excited for the growth of that program. Yeah. So there it is. There it is. Episode.
Time is up.
Yeah, time to go. Time to go. Time to go. Away we go. There it is. That was Graham Rossini. Really enjoyed that conversation. Hopefully you did as well. As always, subscribe, yoption.com. Big thank you to Arizona State and everybody there for setting this conversation up. Our founding partner, 76. For Jim Thornby, I'm Yogi Roth. This is your off season. Get your workout in. Peace.